The 10 most painful farewell tours in R&B history that were never actually goodbye. 10 farewell tours. 10 times an R&B artist stood before an audience and said goodbye, and then something happened. Because every name on this list came back. Some chose to, some were forced to, and one of them, the name I've been saving for last, never got the chance to properly leave in the first place. The word goodbye turns out to be more complicated in R&B than anywhere else. This is the countdown of the 10 most painful farewell tours in R&B history that were never, in the end, actually goodbye. Number 10, Gladys Knight and the Pips. Let me tell you who Gladys Knight and the Pips were before I tell you what the farewell looked like. They were a family, literally. Gladys, her brother Merrill, who everyone called Bubba, and their cousins William Guest and Edward Patton. They started performing together in Atlanta in 1952 when Gladys was 8 years old. They were singing at church events and talent shows before the music industry knew their names. And by the time they hit their commercial peak, they had been performing together for more than 2 decades. The kind of bond you cannot manufacture, the kind that runs in the blood. I Heard It Through the Grapevine in 1967, Motown's biggest selling single at that time. A record that should have been the hit everyone thinks is Marvin Gaye's version. If I Were Your Woman in 1970. Neither one of Us wants to be the first to say goodbye in 1973, Grammy Award for Best R&B Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocals. And then the song that defines them, Midnight Train to Georgia in 1973, #1 on both the pop and R&B charts. Another Grammy, a song so complete, so perfectly rendered, that it still plays wherever human beings need to feel something true. And then, after 37 years together, the farewell arrived in the way these things usually do. Not dramatically, just quietly, the way the industry moves on. In 1988, Gladys Knight and the Pips went out on their final tour. In 1989, the Pips retired. Merrill, William, Edward. They stepped away from the thing they had built with their blood and their voices and their decades. And here is what needs to be said clearly. Edward Patton died February 25, 2005. William Guest died December 24, 2015. The Pips are gone. Their last performance, whatever night it was, in whatever city, was their actual goodbye. The world mostly did not know it at the time, but Gladys never left. She recorded the James Bond theme License to Kill in 1989. She released Men in 1991. A top 5 R&B hit. She has been performing ever since. She walks onto stages and sings Midnight Train to Georgia, and the room still sings back. If this group was in your house growing up, if their records were stacked next to the record player when you were a child, you already know what I'm talking about. You understand why this name belongs on a list like this one. The Pips deserved a proper goodbye. What they got was retirement. And the difference between those two things is exactly what this list is about. Number 9, New Edition. Five teenagers from the Orchard Park housing projects in the Roxbury section of Boston. Ricky Bell, Michael Bivins, Bobby Brown, Ronnie DeVoe, Ralph Tresvant, discovered at a talent show in Boston in 1982, when the oldest of them was not yet 15 years old. They signed with a producer named Maurice Starr, who would later take everything he learned from managing them and use it to build New Kids on the Block. But before the industry got involved, New Edition was 5 kids who could genuinely sing and move and make something feel real. Candy Girl in 1983, #1 on the R&B chart. Cool It Now in 1984, #2 pop. Mr. Telephone Man in 1985, top 12 pop. These were not accidents. These were 5 teenagers who were good, who had worked to get there. And then, in December 1985, Bobby Brown was out. I want to be precise about what is and is not in dispute. The exact circumstances remain argued over to this day. What is not in dispute is this: Bobby Brown left New Edition at age 16, under pressure from management and the label, with, as he later said, $500 and a VCR to show for everything the group had earned together. Whether he asked to leave or was voted out, the situation was the same. A teenager from a housing project in Boston, separated from the thing he had helped build, sent into the world without proper accounting. New Edition continued. They added Johnny Gill in 1987. They released Heartbreak in 1988, double platinum, their most commercially successful album. Bobby Brown released Don't Be Cruel that same year, the biggest R&B album of 1988. 2 different versions of what New Edition could become, running in parallel. And whether what happened in 1985 was a decision Bobby Brown made, or a decision made for him, I think you already know what the answer feels like, even if you can't prove it on paper. In 1996, all 6 came back together. Home Again debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, and then the reunion tour collapsed. Bobby Brown and Michael Bivins walked off the tour mid-run. The remaining members finished the dates without them. The BET miniseries in 2017 brought 3.6 million viewers to their story on the first night, 3 decades after the farewell. Because some stories the culture is not finished with, and some names, no matter how many times goodbye gets said, the culture refuses to file away. Real talk, only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's $1 coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it. Number 8, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. In 1955, at Northern High School in Detroit, a boy named William Robinson, already called Smokey by the friends who loved him, formed a vocal group called the 5 Chimes. He was 15 years old. He and Ronnie White, Bobby Rogers, Pete Moore, and Claudette Rogers built something in that school that would become the foundation of an empire. By 1959, they were the Miracles. By 1960, Shop Around reached #1 on the R&B chart and #2 on the pop chart, Motown's first million-selling single. Berry Gordy built Hitsville, USA on the back of what Smokey Robinson and the Miracles made possible. That is the origin of a story that shaped all of popular music. The Tracks of My Tears in 1965. I Second That Emotion in 1967. Songs That Do Not Age. And then in 1970, a recording made in 1966 that Motown's UK office decided to release as a single, The Tears of a Clown, #1 pop, #1 R&B, their only chart-topping pop single in 17 years of recording. And the success of that song convinced Smokey to stay 3 more years. In January 1972, he made good on what he had been saying since 1969. He was leaving, not bitterly, not dramatically. He was tired of the road. He wanted to be home with his family. The Miracles began a 6-month farewell tour. The final performance, July 16, 1972, at the Carter Barron Amphitheater in Washington, D.C. He introduced Billy Griffin as his replacement. The farewell was done. And there is a moment I want you to hold. Because there is a name on this list where the farewell was not made this way. Not chosen, not announced, not sealed with a handshake and a new beginning. There is a name on this list where the goodbye was not given. It was taken, slowly, by something no amount of talent can fight. I want you to carry that. We will get there. For Smokey, the never actually goodbye is clear. He returned to recording within a year. Solo career. Baby That's Back at Ya, #1 R&B in 1975. Cruisin' in 1979, #4 pop. Being With You in 1982, #2 pop. A career that proved the gift was never the group's to keep. And the Miracles, the group he left behind, they had their first #1 pop single in 1976, Love Machine. Without him, the Miracles had their first pop #1 without Smokey in 1976. Let that sit for a moment. Some farewells release things they had no right to hold. This was one of them. #7, TLC Waterfalls, No Scrubs, Creep, Unpretty. You have known them most of your life. They have been part of your soundtrack without you having to choose them. But knowing the song and knowing what it costs to make it, those are 2 different kinds of knowing. And I want to give you the second one. T-Boz, Left Eye, Chili, 3 women from Atlanta who became TLC in 1990, the best-selling American girl group of all time. 9 top 10 hits on the Billboard Hot 100, 4 #1 singles, a diamond-certified album in Crazy Sexy Cool, the only diamond album ever awarded to an American girl group in history. They gave the culture everything. And then on April 25th, 2002, Lisa Left Eye Lopes was killed in a car accident in Honduras. She was 30 years old. She had traveled there for a spiritual retreat to find rest and clarity and space. She did not come home. I need you to hold that. 30 years old. And then the label called. The label wanted to put out a greatest hits, and we were like, our sister just passed away. That is Chili's own account. We did not get the chance to grieve properly. It really was tough. They released 3D, TLC's 4th album, 6 months after Lisa Lopes died, and they performed. And Left Eye's parts would come up during the show, and the screens would light with her image behind them, and T-Boz and Chili said they could never look at the screens when it happened. That is the painful farewell on this list. Not a choice anyone made. A tragedy, followed immediately by an industry that needed product and a release schedule. I will let you decide what that tells you about the business of R&B. But TLC never actually said goodbye. We can never replace her, Chili said. All we can do is carry on her legacy. They have toured as a duo, released a new album in 2017. T-Boz has been clear. I'm never going to put another girl in my group. Never. The never actually goodbye here is not a reunion or a comeback. It is something quieter. It is two women who refuse to let the name of the thing they built disappear, who carry a third voice with them into every room they enter, who have not stopped, even though stopping would have been the easiest thing in the world to understand. Number 6, Diana Ross and the Supremes. This is the most famous farewell concert in the history of R&B. I want to tell you what actually happened that night. January 14, 1970, 11:54 p.m., the Frontier Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. Diana Ross, Mary Wilson, and Cindy Birdsong took the stage for the last time as Diana Ross and the Supremes. The room was full of witnesses: Smokey Robinson, Marvin Gaye, Johnny Carson, Dick Clark. The world had come to say goodbye. But let me tell you who the Supremes were before I tell you what that night actually said. Diana Ross and Mary Wilson had grown up in Detroit's Brewster Douglas housing projects. They had been singing together since they were teenagers. Together with Florence Ballard, they built what became Motown's greatest commercial success, 12 number-one pop singles. The most successful American pop group of the 1960s, behind only Elvis and the Beatles. Stop, in the Name of Love, Love Child, and their final chart topper, recorded, with painful irony, without Mary Wilson or Cindy Birdsong actually present on the track. Someday We'll Be Together. But I need to be precise about what was happening before that stage. Berry Gordy had been preparing Diana's exit since 1967. That is the year he changed the group's name from the Supremes to Diana Ross and the Supremes. The decision to position Diana above the rest had been made years before any audience was consulted. By January 14, 1970, the farewell was the public completion of a plan that had been in motion for 3 years. And Florence Ballard was not in the room that night. She had been forced out by Berry Gordy in 1967, replaced by Cindy Birdsong. She did not share in the ceremony. Florence Ballard, one of the 3 original Supremes, one of the women who had built this with her voice, spent the years after the group in poverty. She died of cardiac arrest on February 22, 1976. She was 32 years old. At the actual farewell concert, the Frontier Hotel's entertainment director took the stage and told the world that Diana Ross would be the greatest star of our time, then added, almost as a parenthetical, that the Supremes will continue being the stars that they are. That is what a farewell looks like when an industry builds it around one person. The never actually goodbye for Diana Ross is straightforward. She has been performing for more than 50 years since that night. In June 2023, she headlined the Glastonbury Festival in England. She was 79 years old. She walked onto that stage and sang, and the crowd sang back. The woman who said goodbye in Las Vegas in 1970 has been giving concert tours for longer than most careers exist. But Florence Ballard did not get that, and that, too, is what the Frontier Hotel farewell contained, whether the stage acknowledged it or not. Number 5, Anita Baker. Let me tell you who Anita Baker was before I tell you what the farewell cost her. Born in Toledo, Ohio, in 1958, raised in Detroit, she sang in gospel choirs. She found her way into the club circuit, singing with the funk group Chapter 8 in the late 1970s. She signed with Beverly Glenn Records in 1983 and recorded The Songstress, a debut album that carried the quiet promise of something extraordinary on its way. Then 1986, Rapture, Platinum, Grammy-winning, Sweet Love, #1 R&B, Top 10 Pop, a voice that could move an entire room into silence without once raising its volume. 8 Grammy Awards across her career, 4 platinum albums. Rolling Stone would later rank her at number 92 on their list of the 200 greatest singers of all time, the defining voice of quiet storm R&B at its most sophisticated. In January 2018, Anita Baker announced her retirement. She launched a farewell concert series. The goodbye was hers to make, on her terms, at a time of her choosing. She had given the culture 3 decades of work. She was stepping away. And then the industry revealed its position. In March 2021, 3 years after the farewell, she went to Twitter and told her fans to stop buying and streaming her music. She had outlived all of her artist contracts. Elektra Records no longer owned her name, and by law, recordings more than 35 years old were eligible to return to her under the Copyright Act's termination provision, and Elektra was going to make her fight for it. She asked her fans to stop. She said, "I am not free advertising for thieves." She referenced Prince, who had written slave across his face in protest of the same system. She was prepared to go to war for the recordings she had made with her own voice, in her own time, out of her own talent. And whether Elektra Records knew what it was taking from a woman who had simply wanted to retire in peace, I think you already know the answer. In September 2021, she won. "All my children are coming home," she wrote, with a photograph of her first 5 albums. The catalog, returned, finally hers. In 2022 and 2023, Anita Baker returned to the stage, now performing music that was legally and fully her own. Concerts sold out. The voice was still there. And I want to be precise about what the never actually goodbye means here. She did not come back because she wanted to undo the farewell. She came back because the industry gave her something to come back for, gave her a fight she had to finish before she could truly close the door. The second farewell, the one Elektra forced on her after she had already said goodbye, that is the story this entry belongs to. Number 4, Destiny's Child. You know the songs, Say My Name, Survivor, Independent Women, Bootylicious. You know them the way you know your own handwriting. But knowing the songs and knowing what the farewell actually meant for each of the women on that stage, Those are two different kinds of knowing. Let me give you the second one. Beyoncé knows. Kelly Rowland, Michelle Williams. Houston, Texas. The final configuration of a group that had been together since the late 1990s, that had survived lineup changes, label pressure, and the particular difficulty of being a group built around a talent that the industry had already decided was singular. Say My Name in 1999, number 3 pop, number 1 R&B. Independent Women Part 1 in 2000, number 1 pop for 11 consecutive weeks. Survivor in 2001, Bootylicious, number 1 R&B. The years between 1999 and 2004 belong to Destiny's Child. Then came Dangerously in Love in 2003, Beyoncé's solo debut. 5 Grammys. The entire world understood what it meant, and Destiny's Child, still intact on paper, was living inside that understanding. In 2004, they released Destiny Fulfilled. The title was not accidental. Beyoncé confirmed later that the decision to disband had already been made during the making of the album. The farewell had been decided in private before the audience was told. June 11, 2005, the Destiny Fulfilled and Lovin' It Tour. The Palau Sant Jordi in Barcelona, Spain. 16,000 people. Kelly Rowland stepped to the microphone and said, "This is the last time you would see us on stage as Destiny's Child." The tour ended September 10, 2005, in Vancouver. The farewell was complete. And now I need you to hold what comes after that. Not for Beyoncé, whose solo career you already know, but for Kelly and Michelle, who walked off that stage in Vancouver and into a world where the name Destiny's Child was immediately understood as where Beyoncé came from. If this is new to you, what the farewell meant in practice for each of these 3 women individually, that is not your fault, but it does not have to stay that way. The Never Actually Goodbye, the 2013 Super Bowl halftime show, the 2018 Coachella performance, Beyoncé brought Kelly and Michelle out for Say My Name, Lose My Breath, and Soldier. The 2025 Cowboy Carter Tour finale in Las Vegas. The reunion keeps coming, the door never fully closed. But the door that opened after Vancouver, the one that led to different places for 3 different women, that door told a story the farewell concert did not. Number 3, Teddy Pendergrass. Let me tell you who Teddy Pendergrass was before March 18, 1982. Born in Kingstree, South Carolina, March 26, 1950, raised in North Philadelphia, ordained as a minister at age 10, which tells you something about the man before we even reached the music. He played drums in church. He sang gospel before he sang anything else. He joined Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes as a drummer in 1969 and became their lead vocalist in 1970. If You Don't Know Me By Now, in 1972. Wake Up Everybody, in 1975. He went solo in 1976. His debut solo album reached number 5 on the R&B album charts. Then, 5 consecutive platinum solo albums. At that point in time, a record for any artist. He pioneered the women-only concert. His stage presence was legendary, the kind that made venues feel different from the moment he walked out. In early 1982, he was the leading male R&B artist in America, ahead of Marvin Gaye, ahead of Barry White. March 18, 1982, 1:30 in the morning, Lincoln Drive in Philadelphia's East Falls neighborhood. Teddy Pendergrass lost control of his Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit. The car struck a guardrail, crossed into oncoming traffic, hit 2 trees. His 5th and 6th cervical vertebrae shattered. At 31 years old, he would never walk again. A music journalist named Dennis Hunt wrote in 1982, "If he sang from a wheelchair, it wouldn't be the same. Who's going to be the next Teddy Pendergrass?" Teddy Pendergrass read those words. He said later that his spirit collapsed. "I know. I felt the same way when I found all of this." That is the painful farewell on this list. Not chosen, not arranged, a mourning in March that took something permanent from a man who was not close to done, but the never actually goodbye. This is the one I am most proud to tell. July 13, 1985, Live Aid, in front of 100,000 people in Philadelphia, his city, and an estimated 1.5 billion television viewers worldwide. Teddy Pendergrass rolled onto that stage in his wheelchair. He had not performed in front of a live audience in 3 years. He did not know what would happen when he did. He cried, "Center stage," before he began to sing. He composed himself, and then he said, "I want you to know, I feel your love," and he sang. In 1988, Joy, his first #1 R&B single in nearly a decade, gold certified. In 1984, while still in rehabilitation, he had recorded Love Language and Hold Me, a duet with a then unknown Whitney Houston, became a top 10 hit on the R&B and adult contemporary charts. A man rebuilding himself from the ground up, recording music, introducing a future legend to the world. He performed until November 2008. His last concert, a PBS special at the Borgata Casino in Atlantic City. He died January 13, 2010. This name deserves to be in your memory after today, not as the story of what happened to him, as the story of who he was after it happened. The man who stood before the world's verdict about what he was worth and refused it. Number 2, Al Green. Born April 13, 1946, in Forest City, Arkansas, raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He came from a gospel family. His father sang gospel. As a child, Al Green sang gospel, and then he found something else. The secular world of soul music, and what he did with it changed the shape of American R&B. He signed to High Records in Memphis in 1969. He found producer Willie Mitchell, the high rhythm section, a sound that no one had made before. Together they built something precise and devastating. Tired of Being Alone, in 1971. Let's Stay Together, in 1972, #1 on both the pop and R&B charts, and one of the most complete recordings in the history of the form. I'm Still in Love with You in 1972, Love and Happiness in 1973, Take Me to the River in 1974. They called him the greatest soul singer of the early 1970s, the last great Southern soul singer. That is not exaggeration. That is the assessment. And then the night of October 18, 1974, His girlfriend Mary Woodson entered his Memphis home and poured a pot of boiling grits over him as he bathed. He was taken to the hospital with second-degree burns across his back, stomach, and arms that required skin grafts. Mary Woodson died that night. And Al Green interpreted the entire event, the violence, the horror, the proximity of death, as a summons from God. He continued recording secular music for 4 more years, 3 more albums with Willie Mitchell. But in 1979, he fell from a stage during a concert in Cincinnati and heard, in that fall, a final answer. He stopped. He spent the 1980s recording gospel on Myrrh Records. He built the Full Gospel Tabernacle Church in Memphis. He became Reverend Al Green. He gave his gift entirely to the Lord. His secular fans mourned. The R&B chart lost a voice that could not be replaced. And some of you watching this right now know exactly what kind of loss that was, because you grew up with that music in your house, and then one day it stopped coming. But I need to tell you what came next, because the never actually goodbye here is the one that required patience. In 1988, Al Green recorded Put a Little Love in Your Heart with Annie Lennox for the film Scrooged, his first pop top 10 single since 1974. 14 years. The voice was exactly where he had left it. The gift had not gone anywhere. It had simply been held in trust. In 2008, Lay It Down, produced with Questlove and The Roots, became his first album to reach the Billboard Top 10 since 1973. He was 62 years old. In January 2026, at 79, he released a new EP, To Love Somebody, with British singer Ray Jesus. Some of you just got quiet. That's the right response. A man who tried to put down a gift that was not his to put down, who did what he believed God required, and who found, in the returning, that the gift had waited without complaint for the moment he was ready to pick it back up. Number 1, Maurice White / Earth, Wind and Fire. Born December 19, 1941, in Memphis, Tennessee. He grew up in the Foot Homes Projects in South Memphis. He learned to play drums as a child. He moved to Chicago. He played session drums for Chess Records, the label that housed Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry. He joined the Ramsey Lewis Trio in 1966. He was exceptional by every account. And then in 1969, he moved to Los Angeles and founded Earth, Wind and Fire. He incorporated the African kalimba, a thumb piano he had discovered in a Chicago drum store, into the band's sound. He built a stage production unlike anything in popular music, elaborate, theatrical, spiritually ambitious. He was, by every definition, a visionary. Shining Star in 1975, number 1 pop and number 1 R&B, their first. September in 1978, a song that plays today at every celebration, every graduation, every moment when human beings need to feel the specific feeling of being alive in a good moment. Boogie Wonderland in 1979. After the Love Has Gone in 1979. Grammy for Best R&B Song. 22 Grammy nominations. 7 wins. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees in 2000. One of the most influential bands in the history of popular music. And then, in the early 1990s, Maurice White noticed tremors in his hands. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He told no one publicly. He continued touring with the band for approximately 5 more years after the diagnosis. He said later, "I traveled with the band for 5 years with Parkinson's. I was treating it with medication then." He traveled with the band, hiding a truth that was slowly taking his body from him because he was not ready to let the stage go. And then, in 1994 and 1995, he stepped away from touring, quietly, without announcement, without a farewell concert, without a final night under those lights. He simply stopped going out there. And Earth, Wind and Fire continued, his brother Verdine on bass, Philip Bailey on vocals, the band performing under a name that Maurice White had built from Memphis and Chicago and Los Angeles, and a kalimba discovered in a drum store, and Maurice White was not there. In 2000, when EWF was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he spoke publicly about the Parkinson's for the first time. He said, "I just got tired of not talking about it. A lot of people had not seen me in a long time, and they started wondering what was happening." That is the moment the world found out why he was gone. Not a press conference, not a statement, an induction ceremony 6 years after he left the stage. And whether any institution in this industry, the Hall of Fame, the labels, anyone, organized a moment to give Maurice White the ceremony that 6 decades of music had earned him, I think you already know the answer. In January 2016, the Recording Academy announced that Earth, Wind and Fire would receive a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Maurice White gave what would be one of his final statements, via email, because Parkinson's had taken his ability to conduct interviews in person. He wrote, "I put so much into EWF, and I'm glad the fans still embrace the music." Via email. Weeks before he died, February 4th, 2016, Maurice White died in his sleep at his Los Angeles home. He was 74 years old. His brother Verdine released a statement on the band's Facebook page. "My brother, hero and best friend Maurice White passed away peacefully last night in his sleep." That is the farewell statement for one of the architects of American popular music. And now I want to tell you what never actually goodbye means for this name, because it is different from every other entry on this list. Earth, Wind and Fire is still touring. September will play tonight, at a party, at a reception, at a celebration, somewhere in every time zone on Earth. Maurice White's music is everywhere. His name is everywhere. The gift he built is as present in the culture today as it was in 1978. But the man who built all of it left the stage in 1994 without a ceremony, without a proper goodbye, without the farewell that a man of his magnitude had spent his entire life earning. Some artists give everything to the culture. The culture does not always return the favor. And that is what talent without documentation looks like in its most painful form. Not a name forgotten, a name still present everywhere, in the absence of the man who made it.